You know the story. For days, the Israelites moved around the towering walls of Jericho. Footsteps traced the same path again and again, horns sounding into the hot air, their echoes pressing against ancient stone. Then, at the appointed moment, the silence shattered. The horns cried out. One final, unified blast. The mighty walls of Jericho trembled, cracked, and fell. You may think it's the first time this has happened, but this has happened before. At least 20 times. Let's review some of them. Around 9,600 to 8,800 BCE, the settlement at Tel es-Sultan was a place of innovation. Stone houses clustered near the spring, plastered floors renewed again and again, and monumental works like the stone tower and wall rising above the landscape. But over time, the rhythm of daily life began to change. New house construction becomes rarer. Floors are no longer replastered. Walls collapse and are left unrepaired. Storage pits are abandoned where they stand, still holding traces of grain, as if their owners expected to return. Refuse layers thin out, suggesting fewer people producing less waste. The spring still flowed, but its reliability may have fluctuated. Climatic instability at the end of the Younger Dryas, combined with changing rainfall patterns, likely placed stress on early farming and foraging systems. Small shifts in water availability or soil productivity could have made life at Jericho less predictable than before. As nearby regions became more attractive, new valleys, fresh soils, emerging networks, people may have chosen to leave gradually, not collectively. The Great Wall and Tower were not destroyed. They simply stood, unused, as wind and rain softened their edges. Paths once worn smooth by bare feet faded back into dust. What remained was a place still alive in memory, but no longer occupied. By the end of the PPNA, Jericho was not a city in ruins, but a landscape of remnants, structures without voices, tools without hands, and a settlement paused between occupations, waiting for the people of the Pre-Pottery Neolithic B to return and reshape it once more. By the Pottery Neolithic, Jericho was no longer the monumental walled settlement of earlier millennia. The great stone tower and defenses of the Pre-Pottery Neolithic already lay abandoned and partly buried. What remained was a spread of modest mud brick houses, storage pits, and open work areas clustered around springs and fertile ground. Jericho sat low in the Jordan Valley, sustained by springs, but constantly threatened by water it could not fully control. Seasonal rains in the surrounding highlands sent sudden torrents down the wadis, transforming normally dry channels into violent floods. When flooding struck, it did not arrive as a single catastrophe. Water spread across the settlement floor, seeping into courtyards and houses built of sun-dried mud brick. Walls softened and slumped as their bases dissolved. Storage pits filled with silt and debris, sealing grain beneath layers of mud. Roofs collapsed inward as wooden supports loosened and earthen plaster washed away. This happened time and time again. In the end, after many floods, the town lay destroyed again. By the late Bronze Age, Jericho stood fortified, its walls layered from centuries of rebuilding, its streets narrow, its houses pressed tightly together. Grain was stored in jars. Fires burned low at night. Life moved cautiously, always aware of the fragile line between safety and ruin. Across the plain, came the people of Israel, led not by siege engines, but by faith. The Lord had given Jericho into their hands, but not by the ways of war. Instead, he gave a command that defied reason. For 6 days, the army marched once around the city. Soldiers walked in silence. Priests carried the Ark of the Covenant. Trumpets of ram's horns sounded, low and steady, echoing against stone. The people spoke no word. From the walls, the people of Jericho watched. No attack came, only footsteps, only horns, only time. On the 7th day, the march began again. Once, twice, 3 times, 7 times around the city. And when the final circuit was complete, the priests raised their horns and blew with all their might. The air filled with sound, trumpets, voices, thunder from the earth itself. And then the walls of Jericho collapsed. Stone fell outward. Towers shattered. Pathways opened where barriers once stood. The city was taken in a single moment. Fire consumed it. What stood for generations was brought low in an instant. Jericho was abandoned. Wind filled the empty streets. Rain softened the fallen bricks. Layers of rubble slowly buried the past. Jericho has fallen many times, not only to armies, but to the earth itself. Perched along the Dead Sea transform fault, the city sat on restless ground. Again and again, earthquakes shook its walls apart. In the Bronze Age, violent tremors cracked stone foundations and sent mud brick ramparts sliding into heaps of dust. Houses collapsed inward, storage jars shattered, and streets vanished beneath rubble. Archaeology records layers of destruction without signs of siege or fire. Collapsed walls, tilted floors, crushed roofs, silent signatures of seismic force. Each time, the survivors rebuilt, and each time, the ground would eventually move again. Jericho's story is not one single fall, but a cycle. Build, tremble, collapse, rebuild, repeated across thousands of years as the earth itself became one of the city's most powerful destroyers.